Hello, Dinara.
Hi, James.
Welcome back, everybody. So it's time for us to get started with the next topic. And today what we have for you is the present perfect again. So it's just a bit more information on the present perfect, because in my personal experience as an English teacher, this is one of the tenses that people find the most challenging. So it's a good one to focus on.
Yes, it was confusing in the past to me too, but somehow I found my way. It took me quite a bit of work.
Absolutely. But I think once you get the hang of it, you have a good idea of when to use it and where not to use it. So, yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to read an example conversation out. So, have you traveled a lot, Jane? Yes, I've been to lots of places. Really? Have you ever been to China? Yes, I've been to China twice. What about India? No, I haven't been to India. So when we talk about a period of time that continues from the past until now, we use the present perfect. Here, Dave and Jane are talking about the places Jane has visited in her life, which is a period that continues until now. So in the same way we say, have you ever eaten caviar? We've never had a car. I don't know what the film is about. I haven't seen it. Susan really loves that book. She's read it 3 times. And just remember, she's is short for she has in that context. It's a really boring movie. It's the most boring movie I've ever seen. And remember that been to or being on its own can also mean visited. So I've never been to camp. Have you been there? Okay. Yeah, and that particular word, although this is a totally different topic, it's got 2 different, you'll hear 2 varieties. So the short I sound for some native speakers, you hear the long I for others. So bin, be, you hear both, and you can say either. But where will we? I always think that a very good place to use this tense and get used to using it is life experiences, because this is a tense that starts in the past and continues to the present. And obviously, because we are alive, because dead people don't speak, well, unless you get a medium or something, or a Ouija board, or generally speaking, dead people don't speak. So our lives are still ongoing, and so you can use this tense a lot to talk about life experiences, because it's not about a specific period of time. It's not like in the last 2 weeks or in the last 5 minutes. It could be any time, in the last 5 minutes, in the last 2 weeks, in the last 3 months, in the last 10 years, in the last 30 years. Or 40 years or 100 years. Just depends on the context. This is a very good example to remember. So that's how we would use it.
So I have several comments already. So why it was confusing, this tense to me, because of the, is it auxiliary verb we call? Have, has in this case?
Yes, it is have.
Because obviously when we start learning English, we know we use have and has as a separate noun, and this thing confused me because my teachers, for some reason, they did not make an emphasis that in this case it's just an auxiliary verb, and we use it just to show present perfect. And the second comment, that here they show the graph from past till now, and for example, I thought that, isn't it present perfect continuous when we say something we have been doing from past till now? So I suppose already our students who will be watching this video, they'll be also confused, because they'll be thinking as foreigners.
Absolutely. I think the main thing is that it's not about a certain period of time. What you're talking about is something that is open-ended. So if you think of it as a period of time that is an open loop, it's not a closed period of time. Because a closed period of time would be about completed actions. And for that one, we use the past simple, generally speaking. So if you think about this period of time as being over or not, then you'll know whether to use it in the present perfect. So if it's not over, you can use the present perfect. So, for example, if I use some of the simplest ways to talk about that, a very good example is the living relative versus a dead relative. So if I say, for example, my aunt has been to Paris 3 times, but my grandma was in Paris 3 times.
So if I say, in my case, because I'm alive, and I do not give you a specific time when I was in Paris, in that case, I cannot use past simple.
Exactly.
So I have to use present perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's say when we use present perfect, we concentrate our attention on the action.
Yeah.
And when we use past simple, we concentrate our attention on time period.
Yeah, exactly.
When it happened, right?
Exactly. That it's a completed action in the past that completely lies in the past. So the thing is that I'll give you an example. So if I ask you the question, have you ever been to France? Then your response will be, yes, I have been. I went there in 2018. So you see, yes, I have been. Yes, or yes, I have, even you can respond as on its own. That one is about your general life experience. Yes, I have visited France in the past, but I went there in 2018. Well, 2018's gone. So as in, it's a period of time that is completely over. So it will never come back again. So that's why you can answer initially in the present perfect, and then you move directly to the past simple. So if you're mentioning a closed period of time, that's what's key. So that's why you'll often use these tenses together to talk about a single experience, because the open loop of time, or the open period of time, is your life. You've been to Paris in the past. But the exact time you went there was in 2018. So and that period of time is over. But if you were to say since 2018 I've been to Paris twice, then you're including the starting point as 2018, but 2019 is included, 2020 is included, 2021 is included, and right up until December 2022, when at the moment of speaking. So that's the way to think of it.
I find English grammar fascinating because of these things. It's for me, it's maths. All these auxiliary verbs, they show us a lot. They give us a lot of information.
Absolutely.
Without saying extra words.
Yes, exactly. And the auxiliary that we use here, have, it is used in all perfect tenses. So it's not just the present perfect simple. You can use it in the present perfect continuous. You use it in the present, in the past perfect simple, the past perfect continuous, the future perfect simple, and the future perfect continuous. You can use it in all of these. So and the only real exception and where you have a term that looks like it's in the present perfect but isn't used in that sense is have you got. But that's a special case. Have you got a car? But that's a very special case for that particular phrase. It's just a different way of saying, do you have?
Yes. Let's say it's some kind of just very concrete phrase which you are used to say.
Exactly. It's just commonly used. It's idiomatic. It's what gets said. But that's a very, very, very specific example of which there are no others. So, exactly.
I see. Very interesting. Thank you for such detailed explanation.
Absolutely. So, let's have a look at some of the other examples that we can use the present perfect in. So in the following examples too, the speakers are talking about a period of time that continues until now. So you'll notice, and this is a clue as to whether you're going to use the present perfect or not. Recently, in the last few days, so far, since I arrived, etc. So all of these, you can tell that this is a period of time that starts in the past but continues to the present. So this is why it often gets used with certain words or certain phrases. So have you heard anything from Ben recently? Because, well, recently it's not defined, but, you know, as in depending on the individual, that could be anything from in the last week to, you know, in the last 3 years. It depends on the individual and their circumstances. But what it clearly states is that's a period of time that starts in the past, continues to the present. So you're not just asking about, did you see him did you hear anything from him in 2017? Because that's fully in the past. We're talking about recently. So it doesn't have to be very strictly defined. That's another thing. It's just starting point in the past, whether that's 5 seconds or 20,000 years, doesn't matter. So exactly. I've met a lot of people in the last few days. So we know the starting point is 3 days ago, 5 days ago, 10 days ago, something like that. You know, so again, not very explicitly defined, but it starts in the past, continues to the present. Everything is going well. There haven't been any problems so far. In other words, since whatever this is started, you know, like the project, for example, the project or the new job you're working on or the new house you're living in, you know, as in, so it starts in the past, continues to the present. The weather is bad here. It's rained every day since I arrived. So the starting point is when I arrived. So they don't state exactly when that is. That could have been 3 days ago, 6 weeks ago, not stated. But the starting point is when I arrived. And by the way, everybody, this is important to realize, and we've seen this already, is that the contraction, the contractive form that is apostrophe S, can either be is or has. You just have to know based on based on the context. So we know because it is rained wouldn't mean anything. It doesn't make sense. Whereas so it's rained, we know it has to be it has rained.
Because of the verb form. Because if it was it's raining, it means that here they're using present continuous, not present perfect.
Exactly. Because the auxiliary verb for continuous tenses, for simple continuous tenses, is be. Whereas for the present perfect, it's have. Is the auxiliary verb. Exactly. It's good to see you again. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Okay? We haven't seen each other for a long time. Now, again, it's not defined. So could be 6 months, could be 20 years. Depends on the person. But because it's a subjective comment. But the starting point is a long time ago. And that continues to the present. And in the same way, we use the present perfect with today, this evening, this year, etc., when these periods are not finished at the time of speaking. So, I've drunk 4 cups of coffee today. Today is not done yet, so you can say, I've drunk. Have you had a holiday this year? Well, this year is not over yet. Well, still got a few days left. So the year's not over yet. So, you know, you can use that one. I haven't seen Tom this morning. Have you? You know, all of these examples, it's exactly the same. So I haven't seen Tom yet. Tom this morning. Have you? Have you had a holiday this year? I've drunk 4 cups of coffee today. So each of these, today, this year, this morning, they're not over yet. So we use the present simple, the present perfect, sorry.
We use present perfect and here. For example, in Russian, in these cases, it will sound, we will be using past tense in Russian. So here they also mean past tense, right?
Yeah.
Because when we use present perfect continuous, it is present.
Yeah. So the main difference between present perfect simple and present perfect continuous is stressing whether you're still in the middle of something. The thing is, I've worked as a teacher for 4 years, for example, I could say. It's not suggesting it's over. I'm just saying that it started in the past and it continues to the present. But so it can have a present sense as well. But I've been doing something means that you're stressing that it's still ongoing. So the stress is different, basically. Present perfect could be over, but not necessarily. Whereas the present perfect continuous means it's definitely not finished.
I see. With present perfect, for example, you started teaching 4 years ago and still teaching. In this case, how will you say?
So I could either say I've taught the present perfect for 4 years, because there it's, an action in the past has an impact on the present. Or I could say I've been teaching this for 4 years. So you could use either in that particular context. So there is a certain overlap between these two tenses. It's just the difference is the stress. So and also the present perfect, the simple present perfect, can be used to serve in terms of something that's just been finished that has a direct impact on the present. So if I give you an example where these two tenses differ, would be I've been painting the garage all morning. So if I say I've been painting the garage all morning, that one, you know that it is not finished. Whereas if you say come inside, I've painted the garage, that means it's finished. The suggestion is it's finished. I've painted the garage versus I've been painting the garage. So the stress is different. And when you have this present perfect simple use of something that has just been finished, but it's has a direct impact, something that's done but has a direct impact on the present, then you use the present perfect simple and not the present perfect continuous. But for the most part, the stress is different. So with the present perfect continuous, it absolutely has not been finished. Okay, so it definitely is still in progress.
I see. So if I want to be precise, clear about things I started doing some time ago and still doing, I say I have been playing tennis for 5 years, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I've been playing tennis for 5 years. Absolutely, because you're still because there you're just stressing that it's not finished.
Okay, and if I say I have played tennis for 5 years,
in that particular context, it would be okay. So because it starts in the past and continues to the present, it's the only difference is the stress. Okay, where the stress is in that particular context. So there are certain areas where these two tenses have clear differences, like that example of I've painted the garage and I've been painting the garage. Okay, so that one is clear what the difference is. So I'm suggesting with the latter that it's unfinished, but with the former I'm suggesting that it's finished. So there are certain cases where it's different, but the main difference between those two tenses is stress. So if you want to stress that something is not finished, you use the present perfect continuous.
I see. This is something very new to me. New information, because I thought that I cannot say I have played tennis for 5 years. I thought that in this case I have to. When I say for 5 years since 2012, for example, I thought that I have to use always in these cases present perfect continuous. And you say no, I can say I can use also.
You don't have to use it. It is more common to use it. So
I see.
I've played tennis for years. As in I would just use it ever so slightly differently, so but you could use either there. So for example, I didn't realize you played tennis. I've played tennis for years. So there I'm still not suggesting that I've stopped playing, but as in, but I'm just saying, no, but I started it years ago is what you're saying there.
I see.
But when you're just freely giving information, it is more likely you're going to say, I've been playing tennis for years. But if somebody were to say, well, I didn't realize you played tennis. I played tennis for years. That there it would be okay. You see, that one, in that particular context, these tenses are a little bit interchangeable. But there are other examples where they're not. But that's a complicator. That's a complex. Because remember, with any continuous tense, the stress is that something is in progress. Okay, so it's something that is not complete. You can't use a continuous tense to suggest something's complete.
Okay, great. In Russian, we say live 100 years, study 100 years.
Yeah, and it never stop learning. It's a very good idea because it keeps the brain active. So it's good.
Yes. So while doing lessons for our YouTube channel, myself, I study quite a bit. So I'm ready.
So exactly. We can continue with the next one. So we say it's the first time something has happened. For example, Don is having a driving lesson. It's his first lesson. We can say it's the first time he has driven a car, not drives. He hasn't driven a car before. He has never driven a car before. There's that one. The next examples, in the same way we say, Sarah has lost her passport again. This is the second time this has happened. You wouldn't say, this is the second time this happens. That doesn't work.
It works if it's her true habit.
Absolutely. If she loses it every 3 weeks or something, for example, a good friend of mine at university, used to always get us thrown out of, denied entry to places because she couldn't walk properly after a few drinks. So in her case, for example, you could say, oh, this is the 68th time this happened. So this is the 68th time this happens, so there it's a routine. Absolutely. You could use it in context. Yeah, exactly. Andy is phoning his girlfriend again. It's the third time he's phoned her this evening. Exactly. So he has phoned her this evening. Remember, with he's, it's, she's, by context whether it is or has. So just remember that.
Great. Clear. To make clear, please, dear students, your comments about how you feel after such detailed explanation. Obviously, if you have more questions, write them down in the comments. And if we have time, we'll answer. Maybe other people who are, let's say, professional in this tense can help you. So I would like also to ask you to share our videos with everyone who studies English to improve their English. Because as you see, James is a very experienced teacher who is, in my opinion, I think, and I hope one day you'll become a famous linguist. Yeah? Because you are so into languages. And guys, see you in our next episodes. And write down if you need our help, with improving your, especially speaking skills. Bye.
Bye-bye.